Welcome to Your Asian Besties, a podcast where we reflect on our life experiences and what's helping us along the way. I'm Leah.
I'm Ray.
And I'm Marin.
Each episode, we talk about a topic unscripted and unfiltered. Today's topic is about entrepreneurship and creative side projects, and I, Leah, will be moderating. Let's get started. All right, so I think before we dive deep into entrepreneurship, maybe it will help all our listeners if we talk about what we do. What do we do in terms of entrepreneurship, our creative side projects? What keeps you going now? All of that jazz. Marin, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Marin. I had a background in corporate marketing for about 14, 15 years. And during the pandemic, I started my own small business called Kawaii Craft Shop. I make cute things out of polymer clay and other like jewelry and all that type of stuff. So it was kind of like a hobby turned side hustle turned full-time small business.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's been so incredible watching that journey too, Marin. I remember when you were starting with working with your hands, and then it's become your full-time thing. And, over the past several years, it's really been very beautiful, I guess is the term I guess I want to use, to see you really open into that. And so, yeah, I'm Ray. I had various side hustles throughout my life. But right now, my podcast homeroom is kind of my main side hustle. What about you, Leah?
Similar to you, Ray, I've dabbled in many things in the past. And one of the things, and this is when we reunited in this phase of my life, and you all were doing your side project for Meta State Movement. I had just quit a really toxic job. And my first side hustle was creating an ebook on this concept called life experience design, which is applying design thinking to your everyday life. And then the following year, I opened an Etsy store and did art prints, greeting cards, things like that. Sold on consignment in a couple stores. And then I was close to my due date. I was pregnant with my first kid, and it became overwhelming. So I stopped that, which I kind of regret now. And I'm actually thinking about going back into doing that. And then I've done, podcasts, YouTube videos, just a lot of content creation, but more for fun. So, yeah, that's my stuff in a nutshell. So, all the things.
It's hard to summarize it all.
Yeah, and I remember you making like the cards. I remember you had I kind of remember going over to your house, and you had stacks of cards that you had made.
I still have them, and I might try open up shop again and sell them.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have one of your watercolor.
That's right.
Your watercolor, yeah. It's hanging somewhere in our apartment.
It's so funny. When I think about that, I do regret it. I regret quitting, because now that I'm thinking about going back into it, I feel like, had I not stopped, what could it have become, or where would I be now? And the saddest part for me, and I'm curious if you felt this too, just reflecting on, your journeys of taking creative risks, I feel like this time around it's not as scary, and that makes me sad, because that was part of the thrill of it, that everything was new and I wasn't sure what would happen. And now I'm trying to do a DBA filing again, get a seller's permit, and I've done all this before, and I'm like, it's just 30 minutes, and I used to agonize for a month over filling out this paperwork. So.
Yeah, I have those same thoughts about Ray. And I had a project called Meta State Movement, where we were interviewing a lot of folks from our lives who were pivoting, making big life changes. Our tagline was rewriting the American dream. And I think we've seen so many projects out in the world that have cropped up that reminded us of what we were doing. How long ago was that?
It was more than a decade ago.
Dates now. I
More than a
know.
decade
It was
ago.
a
We were
more than
ahead
a
of our
decade.
time.
2013. I know
Yeah.
because that was the year I was unemployed with no job and I wrote that ebook. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I wish we had, continued with
Continued.
it. Also, I feel like the same thing happened to me, Leah. Like life just got in the way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I have to, I have my job and relationship and everything else. And I think back then I thought of it way more binary. Like you either do all this or all that.
Mm.
Where I think now I have a way more open mind about just like include the things that you love to do. You'll make room for it. It doesn't have to all fit so neatly in a box. And yeah, I think after living like through so many soulless jobs or like meaningless jobs, it's like I really see the value in it now. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
before I might have taken it for granted a little bit.
Yeah. Making time, I think, for your creativity is so important. And I think I agree with you, Marin. Like back during that time, it really was all or nothing. And I know that I think, Leah, we kind of talked about this in other conversations about this idea of post traumatic growth. And had I had experienced such a lack in my childhood that I went the opposite direction and felt like I needed to learn everything, do more, and like burn myself out to kind of, I guess, get myself to a level of competency in my creativity. And I think I was driving myself to be successful with my creativity or make my creativity work for me. But now that I'm a little more mature and, am a mom and have zero time, um, I'm realizing that creativity is for me and it's a gift and it's a joy, and I shouldn't be working so hard to make it work for me. I should be working to serve it. And so I think, like, I'm curious for you both, like, how do you separate like that creativity um of like that being your personal outlet um with, I guess, the real world and the economy and, like, I guess, making money from your creativity? How do you balance that?
Maren, you want to take this one first?
It's always a hard question about balance, but I mean, I just feel like what I'm doing now is very meaningful to me and I enjoy the process of it. I mean, I don't like doing taxes and things like that, but we have to do them anyway. So, I don't really see it as too much of a balancing act. I just think like it's all integrated for me, and that is a blessing. Um, but yeah, I mean, I really try to like not like have my activities for the business be led by what I should be
Mm,
doing. I really try to, navigate things more through my intuition and what's meaningful and to kind of like keep flexibility around it, allow myself to pivot, you know, because the clay stuff that I do is pretty labor intensive and then sometimes it can like burn me out a little bit. So then I started doing jewelry making and beading because it's like a nice balance to that. So I think just like adding things and shifting things as I go has been really helpful.
On that note, do you still create clay crafts for fun, or do you just see it as more of that is your business now?
I do it for fun. Like I'll do it for, friends and family. Like my nephew's birthday is tomorrow. So I made a little cake topper for them. And like for my friends' birthdays, I try to do little things, even for myself, if I want to try something out, like I see an idea and I want to try it out. I try to keep that mind. And I've even done workshops with little girls like for their birthdays. We made these cute little jewelry boxes with like the fake frosting. It kind of looks
Aw.
like a fake cake. and it had all their beads. And I think just being around that and seeing all of their faces light up, and, it reminds me of how I was as a kid. So I try to stay plugged into that and not get too much into the, like, I need to make this a business. And, I've burnt out so many times in my previous careers that I think I do try to maintain that balance for myself so that I don't burn out, because I do want it to be sustainable. So yeah, I think it's just all like a work in progress. Like some months I'll go super hard and I'll be doing a bunch of events, and then I try to like lighten it out the next month, just because I am so against the whole like girl boss hustle mode, all that stuff. I was in that atmosphere for a long time with my various jobs. And so even when I hear the word entrepreneurship, I cringe a little bit because I have certain images that come to mind,
Yeah.
whether it's like the girl boss or all these coaches like telling you have to hustle 24/7. And no, like it's more about like I'm doing this because I enjoy it and I find meaning, in it. And it's my thing to create like the business side of it as well. So,
It kind of sounds like, it's no longer a sprint thing. It's more of like, you're in it for like the marathon. Like you figured out how to make it sustainable for you. And that's kind of what was wrong when I had my first business with making jewelry is I started that business because I loved making jewelry and I thought, "Oh, there's a prospect here. Like I could get paid for what I create." Um, but at some point it was no longer enjoyable for me and I stopped enjoying it because I felt like I needed to make it happen and I needed to like cater to the taste of other people. And I noticed that some things were selling better than others. And those were things that I didn't enjoy making. And so it was really hard for me to separate my creativity from like the needs of the market. And so I burnt out and I stopped making. And I kind of regret it because I think I quit before I could have made it successful. But, I don't know, I still have a little bit of trauma from that. And so I haven't really made jewelry other than to like maybe as a gift for like my friends and family and things like that. But yeah, that was one really big learning experience for me.
I think I have jewelry from you somewhere, a necklace.
Oh,
I need to go dig it
yeah, I have
oh
the earrings
yeah.
too. I also have that same burnout jewelry story because I started doing jewelry for a while
Oh yeah.
back in the day. And then all of my mom's friends gave me all their broken jewelry to fix. Like I started becoming a dumping ground
Oh
for other
no.
people's jewelry. And I also was like, I hate this. Like I'm going to
Yeah.
stop doing it. And I think just when you're young, you're just maybe a little bit more, of that people pleaser mindset. So you're just like,
Mhm.
yeah, I can do that and that and that and that. But I think the difference for me doing this business is I kind of came out with I mean, your branding was great though, Ray, like for your jewelry,
Oh,
business.
thank
But I
you.
feel like that part is important. So you can just be like, this is my thing. I'm in control. Here's my branding. Here's what I'm about. So you don't just kind of like take all these things here and there that take you away from why you started it in the beginning. But it's a balance. I mean, you also have to consider what people want.
Yeah.
Like for me, I don't know, I phase things out if they're too difficult to make on a mass scale, or I find ways that I can do it, like by making molds or things like that that will ease the process. So yeah.
That's smart.
What about you, Leah?
Yeah, I'm reflecting back on my greeting card stuff, and I definitely had unrealistic expectations. I thought I'd open Etsy shop and bam, like the orders would come flying, right? It'd be like maybe one here, one there, once a month. And
Yeah.
I wish I had the hindsight to just appreciate those, even those orders. Like I did like zero marketing, and no, I was like, no, if I'm not hitting 100, sales by like whatever 2 months from now, then this is a fail. And then I also took it personally, to your point, Ray. Some of the designs I liked, right, were just sitting there. And once I'm like, ugh, you like why? And it's like I think now, going back into to at least wanting to set up some kind of online shop, I have I think I have both the intention that I'm trying to separate myself from how personal, the work is, or just creating for the sake of creating. Like there are going to be some pieces that I do for myself, right? And I just want to put it
Hmm.
out there. And other things, it will be because I know, it's going to sell well or it resonates more with people. And I think it's just a maturity thing over time. You learn to make peace with certain things and like not everything's as big of a deal anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think
It's very true. Like, I think we were just more precious back then,
yeah,
and it was harder to be vulnerable. Like, nobody really even talked about vulnerability back then, right? Like, we had no language for it, and it was really scary to put yourself out there and put
Oh
your art out
yeah.
there. I mean, we didn't really see anyone else doing it, but now that we're older, like, I just did an event, and this woman came up and she was like, I had this keychain that, it's handcrafted and everything. And it was only $15. And she was like, oh my God, it's so expensive. She was so rude. Like she said it right in front of me. And so I just went right back to her and I was like, these are all handmade. I hand glaze them and everything else. Like I didn't just take that because I'm like, you don't need to be rude about it. Like I'm standing right here. So, so I feel like I'm in such a different place than I would have been in my 20s.
oh man, I have to prep myself that feedback.
Yeah. I have a question for you guys. Like, I don't know if it's like, so I think I got like a different response from like my Asian friends and family versus people who are not Asian. And also there was also this idea of like I had this expectation that because I was doing something that my entire community would support me. And I think that that's kind of like an Asian mindset that, it's very collectivistic. But I found that, a lot of like my Asian friends really and family like really supported me because they knew I was just starting out. But I noticed that like my Western friends were like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing." And that was it. And over the years, I've kind of fallen into this category of only supporting like what I would maybe make, or I mean, not make, but that I would buy even if I wasn't affiliated with this person. And I was curious how you guys approach that. Like, because if you have like 30 entrepreneurial friends around you and you have almost zero in your bank account to support all of your friends, right? Like, how do you know how to support and what the extent of support you should provide? Um, and around that, I'm sure you guys know where I'm going with this. So, yeah, I'm gonna leave the question there.
I can go first. So the way I've done it, right, support isn't just always monetary and purchasing things. So at times when, I just don't have the spending account, I'll pace it out. Like I'll have a list of things like, okay, like remember to, like buy this in the future or support this. But you can also support just by spreading the word or recommending to another friend, like, hey, I think you'd really like this style or this business. Um, and then when you can, right, then I mean, similar to you, I think I still curate. Like I don't just buy for the sake of buying, like, but I'll buy things that I am proud to own. And if it's supporting someone as well, like, it's a double win. So that's the way I've approached it. I'm trying to think of like the Asian versus not Asian. I was in business long enough to know.
Yeah.
It's funny because I thought, Ray, you were going to say the opposite. Like, I thought you were going to say all your Asian family didn't support you and all the Western people did.
Well, I when I said that, I was actually thinking Am I saying the right thing? Like, I don't remember it clear enough because it was so long ago. But I think what you're saying now also could make sense too. I would have to go back and look at the data.
Maybe emotionally they weren't supporting you, but no. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I've had a very positive experience with the API community. That was a lot of the spark for the business in the first place, is I remember going to these Japanese boutiques with all these artists, and there was actually like clay artists there. So I took a lot of my inspiration from that, and I found a lot of support through these API artist communities. It's so amazing that these things exist now. They didn't exist as much back then, but I mean, there's these events that are strictly for, API women, and, they donate to organizations and all of that. So I've definitely found a niche there. I think the people that have most supported me in terms of my kind of like personal circle have been people like you two, who sort of have, I don't know, you are creative people, and you know what it takes to do something on your own. So I feel like you might have an affinity for it, or kind of a respect for it. But I feel like I have other friends who, I think it can be triggering to some people, to be honest. And again, this is me all just psychoanalyzing and making assumptions. But I feel like, yeah, some people that maybe it can trigger them, because, especially like in Asian culture, it's like if you're doing something off script that's kind of out of line with the expectations that a lot of young Asian people carry from their parents and all of that. I think it can be triggering. Like, I think some people do probably talk behind my back, like, who does she think she is, that she can just make art, for a living. I'm sure that's what, I know that is a fact. And I'm okay with it. So I think there is a variety of responses, but no matter what the group is, like within the API community, because I make art that I feel like is representative of my identity, and it's for the culture, that people within that community will resonate with it even more so. Right. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people resonated on with my art on different levels, but I think hearing my story and like seeing all these cultural artifacts, I have a lot of like Asian food and drink that I incorporate into my art, and they just light up at it. Like I have little soju earrings. These Korean ladies will come up like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen this," because they see their culture represented there. So that makes me really happy. But I think honestly, anyone who's putting themselves out there and trying to do something on their own, you're going to get a mix of responses from people, like depending on where they're coming from. And I try not to take it personally, because I always think like the way that someone's responding to you kind of is a reflection more about them,
Yeah.
what's going on with them, than what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure we'll tackle that on a future episode. Being okay with people not supporting you, or yeah.
Mm.
Well, so one of the questions I want to ask, and I'm going to answer first because this is when you were talking, Mary, what it reminded me of is just general tips for anyone thinking about starting their own thing. And as you were speaking about that, one of the things that stood out to me, and this is what I've also found just in my career, is that if you strongly believe in, if you know what your values are and you strongly believe in upholding them, then that really takes, I don't know, then it doesn't matter what other people think or say, right? Like, there was a time I knew, for instance, at work, in order to have work-life balance, I wanted to stop work at like 4:30 every day or something, right? And I would start my commute home. Otherwise, traffic builds up and, I don't get to see my kids. Da, da, da. So I remember like starting to only interview at companies, and that was the first thing. That was my non-negotiable, things like that. And, like I've never really worked late unless I wanted to, right? Like no one's made me stay late. And just having that clarity of, yeah, people are going to talk about you, but you know why you're doing it. You're doing it for, for showing other people that they can be represented and, they feel seen, and, really focusing on that and turning down the volume on, the haters and other people who, it just are jealous, honestly, you know, secretly, I bet they wish that they took that creative risk, right? And you know what? I really don't believe it's just a privilege. I think anyone has the capacity to do it. Maybe not go all in on it, but no one's stopping you from like spending an hour a week to just explore something on your own or have that agency to do something with your life that is truly yours. So yeah, I guess yeah. To sum it up, like just do it. That's my tip for anyone starting your own thing, and have the clarity of why you're doing it. But yeah, any other tips or advice for starting some kind of creative anything?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think just start, like you're saying, like start in small ways and don't burden yourself with all of these expectations of, oh, you have to make it X, this amount profitable by a certain amount of time. I mean, goal setting is good, but I think with a small business, a lot of these metrics that we think about are actually like not fully in our control. So I think it's good, in the small business sense that you can set goals, but they should be things that are within your control in terms of like, okay, if you want to make more sales, then you're going to try in-person events or you're going to try to post more on social media. Those are all actions that you can do. You can't always control the outcome, but I would kind of keep it centered around that and kind of go into it just with like a curiosity mindset. Like, I just want to try it. And you go step by step and don't get ahead of yourself in terms of thinking, oh, I have to figure out the tax situation. Don't get bogged down with any of that stuff at first. Like, just start creating, just start investigating, just start carving out some time to explore whatever activity you want to do. And there's so many resources out there. You can just YouTube or Google anything these days. But really try to stay connected to your whole purpose of wanting to do it in the first place. Like, I think that's a very sacred thing. And I do try to stay connected to that. And, you'll always have your moments where you compare, like, oh, that person has 1 million followers, or, right? But it's okay. I mean, it's you just have to start with where you are and why you're doing it and just like stick with that.
Yeah. And on that note, I wanted to say, like, when I first started my own jewelry making business, um, I really thought, like, oh, I want to do everything like the legal way and make sure that, like, I remember, Leah, earlier you were talking about, agonizing over the DBA. And I just remember like reading all of like the laws and the regulations and just being like, is this a hobby or is this a business? Like, just like serious agony, and like so overwhelmed by it because I was not intelligent enough to understand all of the language. And I remember like going to the office to file, and the lady, and there was like a box that I didn't know what to say, and she was like, well, do you plan to be making more than $4,000 a month? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe not, and just like having zero understanding of that landscape, but no, like operating from fear, like I don't want to be audited. Um, and like looking back, I don't think that when you're starting out with something creative and something that you enjoy, that you should burden yourself with the stress of the real world. And so I'm not saying totally disregard it, but what I am saying is follow Marin's advice and start small. Like, making things for your family and your friends, like getting their actual feedback and their reactions, and not feeling like you need a logo ASAP, but, like taking 3, 6, 7 months to be like, oh, is this viable? Can this become something more? I'm seeing that this friend really liked it and she recommended it to 3 different people. This friend really liked it and and if you're not getting that feedback, that's also a sign, right? That if people have mediocre response to what you're creating, that maybe it is just a hobby for you and that it's something that you should do to make you happy, but don't overburden yourself to make something that you're not even getting traction in your personal space, and to make that something um, bigger. But I'm also not saying like don't find your audience, because like the people around you may also not be your audience, and the people around you may not appreciate what you're doing, but maybe somewhere else in the world or somewhere else in the country or state or city or wherever, that there's a market for you. But the last thing I wanted to say on this is to really know why you're doing it and understanding your story behind why you're doing what you're doing. And that if there isn't a story behind what you're doing, that it's okay, it can come later. But to lean into your own intuition of, I'm doing this because it's making me feel seen after decades of feeling underrepresented. Or, I'm doing this because it's healing the part of me that was not appreciated for who I was when I was younger. And I want to say, like, when I look at all the successful entrepreneurs out there, their story of what they lacked in their childhood or during their developmental years is a really big component of their success.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think going back to finding your audience, it might be a very small audience, but they're out there. I mean, there's what, 7.5 billion people in the world. And, like if it brings you joy, like keep doing it. Um, and this is speaking from someone who hates posting things on Facebook to promote my own stuff, to ask family and friends for anything. I'd rather go to strangers. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I used to have a hang up about sharing stuff,
Yeah.
and now I don't care anymore
Uh,
because of there is so much. I shouldn't swear on here, but there's just a lot of trash. I mean, people are just posting like random stuff.
that
Like they're
is
just
true.
taking quizzes and being like, I'm a bumblebee, or if I'm a color, it's like, who cares? I mean, so there's so much stuff out there. A lot of it is like terrible. So it's just like, who cares? I mean, I just think of it as like, I'm actually doing something. I put my time and effort into this. Like, why not share it? I mean,
You're adding value to people's feeds, whereas many other people are just putting junk out there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's for my business side, but even I think it's taken a while for me to just build the confidence in my own voice and opinions. Because as we've seen with the political climate and everything, it's like in the past, I might not share certain things because I think, oh, these people in my network, all these random people, I might quote unquote offend someone. And I just don't care about that stuff anymore. So it's like if you want to unfollow me for whatever reason because you don't agree with my values or I'm annoying you, then that's fine. I unfollow people too.
I'm going to channel my inner Marin when I open up shop again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ray, you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was, when you were saying like people are just posting, like little surveys and things, and I think this is maybe like secondary like strategy, but knowing that people are naturally self-centered, or not naturally self-centered, but they care about curating other people's perception of them, right? So, like, for example, for me, for a long time, and still, if I'm being honest, a little bit still, have a serious insecurity of being stupid, right? And so like anytime like I would read a complex, really like smart article, I'd be like, I read this and I understood it, and here is my opinion, and I would share it, because I was like trying to curate this perception of me to other people, like, look, I'm smart. But when I realized like everybody is doing this, so like, the people who are like posting things of, this survey told me I am sexy, it's because they probably have this trauma of not feeling like they got enough validation, maybe from the opposite gender, when they were younger. And so they kind of feel like they have to um, prove to other people or show that, look, this agency or this quiz showed that I am actually desirable, and so you should see this. But so when I realized like everybody has their own insecurities, that they're always just trying to prove to other people that they're not a certain way or that they are a certain way, and that they're trying to shape um, other people's perception of them, I realized, okay, I'm going to use this strategy. So, what can I do, right, in my business that is going to make this person want to share what I'm doing? And so it's like, how do I share in a way that makes this person feel like their insecurities are going away? I don't know if this makes sense, but using that as like next level strategy to be like, I'm going to use this in my own marketing or in my own outreach, can kind of benefit you.
I think if you have a good intention, then you should share it. I think it's very simple, like in my mind. It's not like I'm trying to scam anybody or
Oh,
or
that's true.
there's a ton of people that have very ill intentions on the internet, and it's just like if you're just trying to share like a motivational print that you made or some of your art, I mean that's great. Like that's a
Yeah.
great side of the internet, and you should definitely share that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think you should always share like your personal, your joys, because as I'm thinking about like trauma and like what we've incurred, the way that you don't become a villain from all the struggles that you've experienced is by transforming your pain into something that is beautiful. And so when you've been able to channel your own pain or your anger or your more difficult emotions into something that is delightful, and I feel like anyone and everyone can benefit.
Yeah, and I think social media with algorithms, I mean, is problematic, obviously, but it's kind of like a filter. So if people don't like it, they'll unfollow or they won't like, and then they won't be fed that content anymore. But it may eventually find its way to the right audience, you know. So I think that's the positive side. We'll stay on the positive side of things.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, both
Yeah.
thinking positive and negative. When you think about your creative endeavors and the next decade, right? Both you mentioned with the algorithms and social media, with the advent of AI now, and just in general, what your hopes and wishes are for, the continued growth of your business, the side hustles. What does that look like for you? Is it positive or negative?
Marin.
I wanted you to that's such a big question.
I,
I mean, in the next 10 years, I just hope I'm still able to do what I'm doing now, and that, it'll grow with me and I'll still find the same joy from it. And I feel like what I'm doing now, it's like I could continue to do this as like a grandma as long as I don't have arthritis or anything.
mm,
Mm.
So I like that about what I'm doing in terms of just making it sustainable and having that meaning, that I don't think will necessarily change. And it affords me a certain lifestyle that's more flexible that would accommodate like changes with if we started a family. Um, so I think that's like my overarching goal. Um, I don't know. I mean, AI, I don't know that I have that many thoughts on it. Like, I just think all new technology has good and bad sides to it. And when I was younger, I was kind of like anti-technology. I was very much like, during one season of my life, I wouldn't even own a microwave. Like I was one of those annoying people that tried to be so healthy and whatever, and just but I think like my whole motto with social media too is just you just use it for your own purposes. You use it to find community, to find inspiration. And so if people are able to find that with AI, or that I know it helps people like the chat GBT, a lot of people use that um, for like scripting their videos or parts of your business. I mean, that's great if it's helping you streamline. Obviously, there's ethical issues if it's stealing people's art, stealing people's jobs. We've seen that with the writer strikes, and I know a lot of my artist friends, um, they have work stolen, and so that's obviously a problem. But I'm one that doesn't jump on anything too quickly, and maybe that's just because I'm not a Gen Z person. I don't know. I like to like watch how things play out first. Like I don't need to be the first one to get
Mm.
the most expensive like you know phone, or I've always been like a late adopter. I don't know if this is necessarily good advice, but this is just where I'm coming from. Like I think people get so, up in arms about everything, but some of it is you just have to like let things play out and see. And nothing is like purely good or purely bad. So it's just about like getting to know what are the capabilities and can you use it or not, and then just go from there in terms of your personal, usage and for your business. But we can't fully control like how it will affect full on industries. I mean, that's just something that has to play out over time. So, but I'm curious about Ray. I feel like you're more tech savvy than me.
Yeah, I want to hear your perspective.
Interesting. So I really resonate with I can relate to the being a late adopter. I'm like an extra late adopter. And I'm curious, like Leah, if hopefully you're the early adopter of the bunch. Are you?
Yeah, I work in
Yeah,
tech,
so
so kind of.
well, I want to hear what you have to say first because I think I was you were talking about AI and I was wondering like what insights do you have for us?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely use it at work, and a lot of my job now, it's super interesting. I mean, it's helping people really develop self-awareness about what they're looking for in their next job. So, AI is actually a pretty good basic, not equivalent to actually a career coach or someone human to talk to, but a way to get out of your own head and have someone respond back to you when you're talking about your past experiences. And then AI kind of feeds that back to you in a really clean summary, right? Or you're like,
Hmm.
I'll tell you about these things, what three things can you tell back about me? And just to see it articulated that way really creates a good draft of things like that, right? I think it's just instead of having to stare at a blank screen, like AI is really good at filling in something for you to work with, right? I think it's better than starting from completely nothing. And it's also not perfect. So
Mm.
I think that's the caveat, right? Like it's drawing from a lot of different places. And when AI like Chat GPT first came out, when a question was posed to it, like, can you explain what a cloud is? It went straight to explaining what like a cloud algorithm or, like a cloud as
Mm.
like software as a service was, not the cloud you see in the sky. Right.
Mm.
And then you have to train for that. Like AI is a black box and you don't really know where it's pulling all the data from. So without data transparency, that's like the biggest ethical question, right? Is who's teaching this AI what it knows? And then another
Oh my
example.
gosh.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh
go.
my gosh. Can I just
Yeah.
interject here real quick? So I was asking Gemini, Google's solution to ChatGPT and or AI, and I was asking it about Eastern medicine, um, because I was like, okay, well, what's the Eastern medicine solution to such and such? And Gemini spit back, okay, well, this is what Eastern medicine thinks, but from our perspective. And I was like,
You're like,
oh,
what the? Yeah, all of a sudden you
oh,
are identifying, right, with some kind of, yeah, you're personifying yourself, AI, and like, no, like you're neither a he or a she or like better AIs like ChatGPT, I think, or even like, when I talk to like my Google Home, like will acknowledge like when you ask a personal question, it's like, I'm just an AI, like I don't know, like, check for accuracy. But I'm surprised Gemini actually, yeah. Ooh,
yeah.
that's
And
not
so I
good.
was like, I knew it. You are definitely Western.
You're
you,
skewed.
you
Can't
are
trust
skewed.
you. And then what you do though, you have to like start training it to be like, oh, that's interesting. You're taking on a Western perspective. Can you respond from this from an Eastern perspective? You can definitely start getting to prompt it to answers that you want. And I do this with Canva. That's what I was going to mention. So for my newsletter, right? Like I want images of like brown-skinned Asian people for like, cute modern photos. And when I prompt um Canva to produce me an image, whatever, right, that I can use for my newsletter and just put like modern woman or brown skinned woman, then I get like almost like, I mean, half the time it won't generate because it's like this, like, like doesn't concede with our policies, right? Like clearly they're like X-rated photos, like that's coming from the internet. So then I have to like train it like, no, like a Filipino woman, but like doing this or that, right? And then like it slowly gets there, but like I have to prompt it like a few times. It's getting better now, but I think that's the importance of using AI is that if we're prompting things that no one else is, at least we're kind of at least putting into the AI ether like things that better reflect us, right? And I think that's why, like don't adapt too late because if this truly is going to take over the
Mm,
future, like, you definitely want a voice in it, right? I mean, same thing with crypto or same thing with, all these other like phases of AI where, like we get left behind because we're not participating in it. That's like, I mean, and coming from the tech world, I'm definitely very biased. If I wasn't working in tech, I don't know if I'd be as early of an adapter. It's more as part curiosity and also knowing like this is going to impact my work and
mm,
just what I do for a day job. I think a lot of user experience design is around like making sure like it's inclusive, that it accommodates for different use cases and different types of people, right? But not everyone thinks that way. Not surely not the people who are building these algorithms and um yeah, right, like like you think it's just smart, but it's not. It's just feeding off all the information already out there. If all the information already out there is biased, then of course, right, like it's going to spit out things like that. So just something to think about. That's my own perspective. How it relates to my creative endeavors, I don't know. Actually, I do know. So sometimes I will create source files for art, which is like a mashup of different like images, and I will. And lately, I've been on this path of like Greek mythology, like Athena, but like make her Asian. And like I think it's really fun to try these prompts because like no one's ever really like created it before. Like I don't really see representation of that, and I think it's just cool that you can get AI to do it, right? And now, when someone else asks the same prompt, it'll happen a lot faster. I'm like, I contributed to that. So that's,
that's
like,
awesome.
anyway, so that's my soapbox.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really great perspective from an insider, a tech insider. You're a resident tech
Oh
insider,
my,
by
Yeah.
the way. I just dubbed you that.
only within this group.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get
Oh my
trolled.
gosh.
Just kidding.
That's so funny. But I think listening to you both talk about like the future and how that's going to ultimately impact our creativity and maybe like our own entrepreneurship and things like that, you know, I'm constantly thinking about education, right? Like, what do we have to do to teach our young people so that they can be prepared for the future? When they're like an adult. And I think one thing that I really think about is how, like, I think the economy is really changing. And in the circles that I'm in and the people that I'm talking to, they're sort of predicting that everybody is going to have their own business in the future. Right. And that we're not going to have these like huge corporations. I mean, we probably will, but not to the extent that we do now. And like everything is kind of becoming community based. Um, and so like taking that into account, I'm kind of like, okay, we need to start when they're younger, teaching about entrepreneurship and teaching about like how do you work on issues and subjects and questions that are important to you, that you enjoy, that you're drawn to, and how can we get you to start thinking and iterating and experimenting and prototyping solutions for the problems that you want to solve from when you're very young. And so I think like AI really will be able to help like fill in all of those like gaps of, okay, how do I do this from A to Z? Give me a like a framework that I can follow to question this line of questioning, you know? And so I think knowing that we're heading in a direction of like everybody's going to kind of have their own business, and that's kind of the way that you're going to be able to survive, is both scary, but knowing that we've had this experience, then that, you know, I think is really like comforting, I guess, knowing that it is possible, um, and that, you know, we just need to keep iterating over and over again because, you know, I don't know what exactly the future holds. Um, but knowing that we have some of that experience and know how to navigate it, um, gives me a lot of hope for the future.
There's this webinar I attended a month ago, and it was a Moms in Tech Facebook group that I was in. And there's this college student group out of Stanford called Curious Cardinals. And what they do is basically do mentorship for elementary and high school kids to get them, if they're curious about something, right? They'll match them to a mentor who has expertise in that topic and helps them like solve a problem or start a business. So it doesn't even have to be AI, right? But it is this fact of community and really something that just standard education can't offer. Like college students are learning about law and how, you know, this and that. And you have kids who are curious about like, how does this work or why doesn't this happen? And then if you pair those together, right? Like they've had some really good case studies of what, you know, these kids who have these mentors can come up with. So I don't know, something I'd be interested in when my kids are older for sure, if they show a curiosity in something. But like why, you know, like why is that just limited to a group right now? It'd be awesome to have that be the natural order of things. Like, you know, how do you start just finding mentors, right, in your community, folks who are experts on something, who are like essentially a key to unlocking what someone wants to lean into, wants to solve for, right? They just don't have the resources yet. Um, so yeah, I think it's a super interesting challenge.
Yeah,
That
I just
sounds so
think
cool.
like the way that technology moves. There's that book a long time ago. It was called A Whole New Mind,
Oh, yes.
Daniel Pink. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's just showing the importance of creativity
Mhm.
and that, for the US, like our main exports are actually like art,
Yeah.
like our film industry, our celebrities. And if all of these technologies are allowing things to be automated, then it's like the way that we use things, the ability to think off script, that's actually become more and more valuable. I mean, we're already seeing that in the workforce. Like anything that can be automated is either being shipped overseas where there's cheaper labor, or robots are doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, in my neighborhood, we have robot delivery service, we have driverless Ubers in my neighborhood. And so it's kind of scary though. Like, my whole thing is, I just think the ultimate, I mean, making things more efficient is like not the goal in life. Like,
Mm,
ultimately, that's not what gives your life meaning. And so if you're taking the human side out of it, you're taking the heart out of it, you're taking the creativity out of it, then what's the point? Because I feel like so many of our tech trends, like I've just seen them come back around to where they started. Like, we were in college when social media really began, and we used it for community building and all of that stuff, and blogging and being vulnerable and getting deep with people. And it's been lost over time. And now it's coming right back around. Like, you see Substack, people just want to see the written word, they want to see you getting deep. And so I think technology can be great. Like I said, it's a tool and it can make our lives easier. But if we start acting like it's going to solve all the world's problems on its own, or, it's only as good as the people that are using the tool. It's only a tool, and as Leah said, it can be problematic. There's biases in it. It's almost a reflection of the world that we live in. It's not perfect. It's not some like godlike, all knowing, you know, resource. So I think we just have to stay very connected to that. And if anything, it's just making, our creativity, our one on one conversations. That's why I love what I do, because it's actually all handmade and like I'm putting so much love and time into it. And it's such a rare thing. It's
yeah.
just like a lot of those things can just become lost with the new technologies that then replace the things that we were just doing as humans. Like, I remember when I was young and we would write letters to each other over summer vacation, like me and my girlfriends. It's like such a precious thing that we don't really do anymore because we have texting. So I just wanted to throw that in.
You
Yeah.
know, I was just going to say what frustrates me is I remember having this conversation like 10 years ago with a group of coworkers where we're like, why do we still have 40-hour work weeks? You think with all the efficiencies and technology, it would free up people for more creativity and less time working, right? But it hasn't. And it still boggles my mind. Like, we should only be working like 5 days, or 5 hours a week or something, right?
Well, you wonder
Yeah.
why, like how Ray, like we've all experienced how arduous it is to even figure out. It's almost like you're scared out of starting your own
Yeah.
business. They make the steps so difficult for a reason. Like, they don't want us to be free thinking people that have like critical thinking skills and challenge, our systems. They don't want that. They want us to be too bogged down in the system with our 9 to 5s to have time to think about anything, with too much credit card debt to think about any real change, right? So I think that's such an essential part of it. And I do hope that, with technology, it will free people up to think in different ways, think more creatively, and try to make the world a better place, because we definitely need
Yeah.
it, like ASAP.
It does.
Yes. And I want to say, like, the education system is built that way, right? For a reason as well. Like, to make sure that we turn out to be these docile economic products that can go and work for all these corporations that are hauling all of the money and, like, fixing elections. And oh, wait, should we not talk about that here?
We
And,
should. Why not? Unfiltered,
yeah. And
unscripted.
right. And just like making sure that those who have power stay in power and that people who don't have any continue to not have any. And so, like, the whole system is rigged in favor of people who um, have already all of the power and the money, and they're making all the decisions. Um, it's not even in, like, backstage anymore. It's all front and center. Like, we can see who's doing what and how it's all being constructed, and it's slowly being shown to us during this late stage of capitalism that we're in. And so, yeah, creativity is that ultimate I guess,
Rebellion.
revolution.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And to also,
And so powerful, like art can really change people, like whether it's a documentary that you see, I mean, or like poetry. I mean, It's like it can really make change. It can inspire movement. So I think it's very worthwhile, even if society and like our capitalistic structures don't necessarily reward it or value it, and maybe even discourage it and berate it. It is still definitely worth doing. And as Leah was mentioning, it's so important, especially for underrepresented voices and identities, to have a place and have a seat at the table. And we should all be worthy of, starting our own things and expressing ourselves, just like the privileged classes are able to do. It shouldn't just be a very small group of people that control the narrative.
And that's why we have
So,
this podcast.
yes. It always ends up with a rant. It's just like, I just feel like burn the system down,
And that's a wrap,
follow
guys.
your gut.
So we are hitting our hour. But this is always great, right? Like, not to end on like a negative note, but I think this is the message that we seem to come back to time and time again is, the reason why we're doing all of this, the reason why we want our voices to be heard is it is essentially a revolution. It is breaking the systems, and it is our way where we do have control and are able to have conversations like this. So I do want to go around and do the one word thing. If you have one word to sum it up or one last thought, it doesn't have to be one word. Yeah, about this episode. Who wants to start?
So I want to say, I think something that I hear time and time again is this idea of creativity and resting to be a radical act. And I think in this day and age that we should all be learning to rest and express.
That's great. I'm like Leah. I'm like, can I think of just one word? Because I'm so fired up right now.
I know, Maren. You can
But
get
I
a
mean, the
paragraph.
two words I would just say carpe diem. Like the world is kind of a trash fire right now. We're all seeing this late stage capitalism. The old systems are hopefully burning to the ground, and where we're going to rebuild new ones. I just say, like, if you have something you want to do, just start to do it now, like little by little. I think that's been our message as for the podcast and why we started in the first place. It's just like the time is now. Just start now. The world needs your voice and your contribution. So in whatever little ways you can, carpe diem.
I love that. And yeah, echoing that, just create the world you want to live in and add value to it, right? Let's put back the positive, the beautiful, the creative, the thoughtfulness in it, and whatever little ripples we can do to impact that. We could always use more. So yeah. Great. Well, if you haven't already, follow us at Your Asian Besties on social media and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite listening app. Thanks for listening. Bye.